Tonight on The Wrap, Trump takes on the Pope. He deletes this image of himself as Jesus after being accused of blasphemy, but insists he has nothing to apologise for as he doubles down on criticism of the leader of the Catholic Church over the Iran war. And more trouble for Trump as the Prime Minister tells him the UK will not take part as America's new blockade of the Strait of Hormuz comes into force. Tonight we ask, is the US President running out of allies? Also ahead, the litany of failure that led to the Southport attack. A host of officials and the killer's parents are singled out for not stopping the murders of 3 young girls. The Tories and Reform hit out at the Prime Minister after he claims Brexit did deep damage to the economy and he wants a closer relationship with Europe. Plus, Rory McIlroy tells us how he stayed mentally strong to clinch his back-to-back victory at the Masters.
I hung in there and I grinded and, I shot something that was at least respectable to give myself a chance.
Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Baroness Arlene Foster and Kevin Maguire, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of the President's papal row. Well, hello, good evening. Arlene, Kevin, welcome to both of you as well. President Trump has opened an unlikely new front over the Iran conflict, a war of words with the Pope. And he's compounded it by posting a picture of himself as Jesus, which he has since deleted after an outcry. Well, there it is. Kevin, Arlene, your first thoughts when you see that?
Well, when I first seen it, I thought it was grossly offensive. Of course, as a Christian, I think it is grossly offensive, and I'm sure that's why he's deleted it. He doesn't delete very many of his Truth Social posts, but he has deleted this one, and I think that's an indication of how offensive it is, and the fact that I'm sure he's had plenty of kickback from those who support him, because he does have a lot of support in the Christian right in America, and they will be wondering, what is this all about? What's going on?
Kevin.
To present himself as a healer when he took away medical insurance healthcare from 12 million poorer Americans is somewhat contradictory, but he's spinning out of control. I mean, he's completely lost it. We see he's going to bomb Iran into the Stone Age, wipe out civilization one moment. He's comparing himself to Jesus the next. It's just a matter of time, surely, until the Constitution's 25th Amendment is triggered and he's removed from office because he's unfit.
OK, strong words from both of you on that. So the row began after Mr Trump accused the Pope of being weak after the pontiff voiced concerns about the Iran conflict. Well, the Pope has hit back, saying he would continue to speak out against the war. But tonight, Mr Trump insisted he had nothing to apologise for and the Pope was wrong. But his actions have met with criticism from international allies and accusations of blasphemy from some of his staunchest supporters in the United States. Let's hear then from our US correspondent Mark Stone, reporting from Virginia.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person.
I voted for him. I like him a lot, but there are times he's kind of going overboard.
Is he in trouble?
No, I don't think so.
I think before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
And what do they make of this?
I do support the president. I do not support what he just did there.
No, I never saw that before.
You sure that's not AI?
Yes, this is Trump as Jesus, an AI image posted by him, now deleted, by the way. I'm in Virginia at Holy Trinity, Gainesville. Beyond the Washington, D.C. bubble, Trump does well in communities like this, but then so too does religion. Monday midday mass is well attended in this huge suburban church. So what happens here when Trump compares himself to Jesus and takes on the Pope?
He posted the image of himself as Jesus.
Oh, well, that's a little over the top, I think. But yes.
But he still has your support for now.
Yes.
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin, no matter what, because aside from this picture, this is the best president we've ever had, bar none.
And while we were talking, back in Washington, the president was backtracking.
They're all your favorites.
Sort of.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support.
As for the Pope, well, he had this.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel.
Finally then, why is the president lashing out at the Pope? Well, maybe because he hears him and he fears him. He can't remove him, he can't destroy him like he has so many of his opponents, his political opponents. The Pope is above all that. He's also an American. His voice resonates here far more.
There's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong.
But there's something else too, I think. Precisely because he's an American, Trump thinks he can more easily cast him as one of them, not one of us. And remember, 55% of American Catholics gave Trump their vote in 2024. They are watching this fight for sure.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. And David, Mr. Trump does have, a fair number of Catholics in his cabinet. We know his base includes the Christian right in a very strong way. It is an election year. Has he picked the wrong fight?
I think he has, and I think he knows it. Why else would you delete a post that you claim is innocent, depicting you as a doctor, rather than highly controversial, depicting you as Jesus Christ? By taking on Pope Leo, I think President Trump risked offending the largest Christian denomination in the United States. But by posting this meme, he risked offending every Christian across the world. But he's not apologising for it. In fact, he's doubling down on that criticism of the pontiff. Why would that be? Well, perhaps it is because Pope Leo is the highest profile person of faith, daring to challenge the tendency of this administration to use religion as a basis for the war it is currently waging in Iran.
Yes, David, stay there because we've got lots more to talk to you about. But, you were nodding all the way through that, weren't you? The words that Mr. Trump said about the Pope, including that everyone knows he was a shocking surprise. He wasn't on any list to be Pope and was only put there by the Church because he was an American. And they thought that would be the best way to deal with President Donald J. Trump. If I wasn't in the White House, Leo wouldn't be in the Vatican.
Well, I don't think anybody believes that is the reason why he was chosen to be Pope. And certainly he wasn't in the conclave when it was happening, that's for sure. But I do think David's absolutely right. The reason I was nodding is because it's not just Catholics he has actually offended. Christians right across the world will look at that image and say that that is grossly offensive. I find it grossly offensive, actually. And for him to then try and say, it's me as a doctor reaching out to heal, it's not. It's very clear what the intention is behind the meme. And so you can't just talk it away. But he's now trying to move on to different territory now and to attack the Pope for he's not a very good Pope and all of this sort of thing. It's just a nonsense.
Yes, weak and, weak on foreign policy. The Pope, for his part, has spoken out in Algiers today. In Algeria, he's on this tour of Africa. A powerful speech, basically, decrying violations of international law by neo-colonial world powers. So he's not showing any sign of backing down against the force of Mr. Trump's ire.
No, and he'll win this war of words. For that very reason, look, I'm an atheist, a humanist on a good day, and I think it's offensive and he's clearly lost the plot, but you cannot win the battle. He's deleted, as David said, he's deleted the image, so that shows he knows it's burning him, causing him fire, and then he's trying to justify it at the same time. I think this is where the whole strategy has gone, as it's gone over Iran, his justifications. Does he want the Strait open? Does he want it closed? Is he going to blockade it? Is he going to try and clear it? He is all over the place, and this is just part of it. And the War Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has spoken in terms of a holy war against Iran. Now, the Pope isn't going to endorse that.
Well, even the Iranian President, Masoud Pezeshkian, expressed his sympathy for the Pope. I condemn the insult to your excellency and declare the desecration of Jesus, the prophet of peace and brotherhood, is not acceptable to any free person. So that's the Iranian President finding another oblique way to criticise Donald Trump.
Trump's he's irreligious. He is not religious.
Yes, but the people that support him aren't, Kevin, and that's the point. That is his problem. That is his problem. When you hear that 55% of Catholics voted for him at the last election, I think it's an incredible faux pas.
well, many people have said he's lost, Hispanic people because of the ICE deportations. You threaten to alienate the religious right in Catholics in America. As I said to David, it's an election year, but we've talked about the Iranian president. Kevin mentioned the Strait of Hormuz, but the blockade of the blockade began today, David. How's it actually working? What are we supposed to be seeing here?
Well, the president is standing by his decision to choose this option. Anna, he did have other options. Of course, he's talked about tankers being escorted through the Strait of Hormuz. He's talked about taking Carg Island. But of course, both of those things would pose enormous risk. This is probably the least worst option for him. And he has been defending his decision to go there. Let me just for a moment explain the rather bizarre context in which he did speak about Iran today. The president had no scheduled engagements, but the media were asked to gather outside the Oval Office at short notice. Cue the arrival of a DoorDash grandma, a woman delivering 2 bags full of McDonald's food. Now, she was there because the White House wants to change the narrative. They wanted her to talk about the fact that she has saved $11,000 in tax under his policies. But this poor woman, Sharon Simmons, suddenly found herself awkwardly standing beside the president while he took questions on geopolitics and on Iran in particular. He claimed the Iranians had been in touch and very badly wanted to do a deal. He again repeated that during negotiations they were not prepared to agree to not have a nuclear weapon, something they've actually agreed to numerous times. And he went a little further in relation to the blockade, saying that he wouldn't allow Iran to blackmail or extort other countries in the world who needed the oil much more than the United States needed the oil. But of course, he had said all of this in a post on Truth Social when he warned that any ship that was breaching the cordon would be, in his words, eliminated. But I suppose if you're trying to analyse this president from a Truth Social post, it's important to remember that this is a president who posted 12 times on Truth Social between 9 o'clock last night and 9 o'clock this morning.
Yes, it's been a fascinating watch, hasn't it? I'm just reading, actually, David, while you're there, that the US Energy Secretary Chris White has been speaking to a forum in Washington, suggested that oil prices are likely to continue to rise until meaningful ship traffic resumes through the Strait of Hormuz, likely in the next few weeks. So that's his latest assessment. David, thank you for covering both of those stories. Just a very quick thought on Donald Trump and the Strait of Hormuz, because the irony is he's now blockading vessels that he lifted sanctions on in order to keep the flow of oil around the world, to keep oil prices lower. So this is the problem.
You have two enemies, Iran and the USA, both imposing blockades on the Strait. I mean, quite how you break it and where you go with this, I do not know, but it shows he hasn't got a clear strategy. He just veers off in all sorts of different directions. He couldn't come up with a consistent reason why he started the war attack with Netanyahu and Israel. And then he said it'll be over, kept claiming victory, then it wasn't, then he wanted an unconditional surrender, then he accepted a ceasefire for negotiations. Quite how it will end, I have no idea, but I suspect nor does Donald Trump.
Yes, and what help he gets as well. The Prime Minister told President Trump today that the UK would not take part in that blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Sir Keir Starmer told Israel that its bombing of Lebanon was wrong and must stop.
We call for Lebanon to be included urgently in the ceasefire. Diplomacy is the right path, and I welcome the talks taking place this week. Hezbollah must disarm, but I'm equally clear Israel's strikes are wrong. They are having devastating humanitarian consequences and pushing Lebanon into a crisis. The bombing should stop now.
Sir Keir Starmer there. Well, the militant group Hezbollah has tonight called on Lebanese leaders to cancel tomorrow's planned peace talks with Israel. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, is in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, and sent this report.
Emergency workers and paramedics are being killed at an astonishing rate in Lebanon. More than 2 a day have been killed in Israeli attacks in the last 6 weeks. Even so, we found them still working in the most dangerous part of the Lebanese capital right now, the southern suburbs of Beirut.
When it comes to the attacks, we're used to it. Maybe it's time for the international community and others to have some humanity. Our job is to rescue injured, help the people and remove the dead from under the rubble. That's it.
There's a lot of support for Hezbollah here. The group is seen as an armed resistance, and the emergency crews operating here are aligned with the group. Our presence here had to be agreed with Hezbollah officials.
Look at the size of this building and how much has been attacked. And this is large areas of the southern suburbs. Underneath, you can still see the boxes of what look like tea and cereal. Lots of personal items all around. This is a very densely packed area. And all the time we've been here, there's been an Israeli drone overhead.
This used to be a young family's home. The father is a Lebanese army soldier. He wasn't there when the bombs began dropping. His little girl's colouring books are still there, along with her baby walker, her bracelets and hairbands. She was 4 years old and called Lamar, an angel to her family. When they found her body, she'd been decapitated. Her mother was killed with her. Their neighbours are absolutely against any negotiations with Israel.
We don't mind having more bloodshed if this will end in our victory. We can't have them killing our babies and then talk to them.
The Israeli military justifies its attacks on civilian areas and health workers by saying the militants are hiding in these homes and using ambulances for military purposes. And Hezbollah keeps firing rockets into Israeli civilian areas. Targeting non-combatants is a war crime. For Hezbollah parliamentarians, there are strict conditions before they'll agree to talks.
So I'd like to hear from you whether you believe Hezbollah disarmament would be the solution to this.
أمام هذه المجازر in this site and with these massacres, I think the first question now it is to stop the massacre of Israel in Lebanon. The stop of massacre Israel of Lebanon. Not another question now, it's the priority.
A Hezbollah politician speaking there to Alex Crawford. And in terms of Hezbollah, their chief, Naim Qassem, has called on the Lebanese government to cancel this meeting that we talked about between the Lebanese and Israeli ambassadors in Washington, saying it is pointless. In a televised speech, Qassem said the armed group will continue to confront Israeli attacks on Lebanon. In the meantime, Lebanon's foreign minister in Beirut said they'd use the face-to-face negotiations in Washington to press for a ceasefire in the war. And the talks were obviously promised because Donald Trump feared that the issue with Lebanon would derail the ceasefire with Iran. But a desperate situation, as we saw, for Lebanese people. And now Keir Starmer saying that that portion of the war is wrong.
Well, look, Hezbollah is a terrorist organisation, and we all know that terrorist organisations, whether it's in Northern Ireland or in Lebanon, use civilians as human shields. And that's what's happening in Lebanon, and I very much regret that. But I hope that the talks go ahead. It's very important that the talks go ahead and that the Lebanese officials do not listen to Hezbollah, but rather they move forward with the talks with Israel. And I hope that there's hope there. You know, when there's talk, there's always hope of something happening, and I hope that brings a ceasefire.
And what about the strategy of Sir Keir Starmer now, as we look at these pictures of Lebanon? Clearly has said he will not help police the Strait of Hormuz or this blockade of Trump's at the moment. He's spoken out about the fact that Israel should stop this war in Lebanon. Have the days of obsequiousness ended, do you think, in terms of the Trump whisperer?
Yes, and he said he was fed up with him at the weekend, but he's also breaking with Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, and he paid a heavy political price for not criticising in Gaza the cutting off water supplies, power, medical aid and so on, although he did subsequently go on to recognise a Palestinian state. But there's David Miliband, who's now a former Labour cabinet minister, who's now head of the International Rescue Committee, who spoke about the silent emergency in Lebanon, more than 2,000 dead, more than 1 million people forced out of their homes. You scale that up to Britain, Great Britain, United Kingdom, and it's about 20 million people forced out of their homes in the UK, so you can get an idea, a grip of the devastation in Lebanon. And Hezbollah is a powerful force. It's not the only force, but it's part of the political fabric too. It's not just, we designated a terrorist organisation. The Israelis, in Britain, we designate it. The Israelis view it that way, but it's not all of Lebanon, but it is part of the political and economic, social fabric.
have to say, Kevin, you know, you can say that about the IRA and Sinn Féin as well, but the IRA had to come to terms in relation to a ceasefire and declaring that the war was over before there was peace in Northern Ireland, before we were able to move forward. Hezbollah needs to put down their arms and stop the violence and terrorism that's happening in the Middle East, just as Hamas do as well, let's be honest. But, I mean, we cannot deny what's going on in the Middle East, but I'm saying talks is the way forward, the Lebanese people with Israel, and that has to happen. And I think it's wrong for Hezbollah to be given the voice to say, don't do this. I think that's the way forward.
Hezbollah's got to stop firing rockets into Israel, although Israel has invaded Lebanon. But equally, Israel has to stop killing Lebanese.
And the way to achieve that is through talks.
Well, we'll see if they go ahead, and certainly the Lebanese seem to be wanting to go, whatever Hezbollah is urging them. And we will keep an eye on the very latest for the Strait of Hormuz as well. But we're going to move on now, because the public inquiry into the Southport stabbings has found they could and should have been prevented. Numerous agencies were blamed, as were the parents of the killer, Axel Rudakabana. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, has this report now from Liverpool.
By the time Axel Rudakabana arrived at that dance studio in Southport, very little could have prevented his murderous attack. But for 5 years before this moment, agency after agency and his own parents failed to take the chance to stop him. The cost was the lives of B.B. King, Elsie Dott Stancombe and Alice de Silva Aguiar, and harm to so many others. The inquiry into how it happened found it was foreseeable and avoidable.
I have no doubt that if appropriate procedures had been in place and if sensible steps had been taken by the agencies and AR's parents, this dreadful event would not have happened. It could have been, and it should have been, prevented. That what happened on that terrible day was not, to use the familiar phrase, a bolt of lightning out of a clear blue sky. Instead, some form of grave violence by AR had been clearly, repeatedly, and unambiguously signposted over many years.
But police, health and social services, even the security services repeatedly passed the buck. Chances to arrest him, chances to find his arsenal of weapons and poisons earlier were missed. And Rudakabana's parents, the inquiry found, bore considerable blame for not sharing what they knew. In the more than 700 pages of Sir Adrian's report, one line stands out. He said, if Axel Rudakabana's parents had done what they morally ought to have done, then Axel Rudakabana would not have been at liberty to conduct his attack. It would not have occurred. For the victims, there are so many who share that blame.
There will always be bad or inadequate parents, and that's why we have these state agencies there. They're designed to step in and to intervene and to take the action that's necessary. Here, they were on the phone, they were having meetings, but there was just no action. It was like they were playing ping pong ball with this person who turned out to be a murderer.
There were 24 girls at that Taylor Swift-themed dance event in July 2024 when Rudakabana entered with a knife and began his attack. He is now serving a minimum 52-year sentence. This young woman was one of those who survived the attack, but still bears the mental and physical scars. Are you hopeful that this inquiry will do that, will make a difference?
Hope so. Sure hope so. Otherwise, what's it all for? If we're not getting change, then what's the point?
You want your voice to be heard in all of these areas. Why is it so important to you?
Because, no, I don't think anyone else should go through what any of the people involved have, or what they go through on a daily basis. No one else should feel like that, because I can still recall like it's yesterday. It's almost been 2 years, and it's still there.
The Prime Minister promised to act on the inquiry's recommendations.
I want to put on record in this House my total determination to make the changes across the entire state that are so clearly necessary to honour the victims, the injured and the families of Southport. Yeah. Today's report, Mr. Speaker, is harrowing. It is difficult to read, And I cannot begin to imagine the pain upon pain that it will cause the families that it affects. And our thoughts are with them today.
But for the lives taken and those changed forever, if only others had done what they should have, the inquiry chair said, history simply would have taken a different course. Greg Milam, Sky News.
This was so saddening to listen to, wasn't it? The chair inquiry giving his pronouncements. The grave violence threatened by Rida Kobana had been unambiguously signposted over many years. Fears had been communicated, did not result in coordinated action. Missed opportunities, numerous systems ineffective or inadequately used. And the number of times, for example, he was before police, I think 7 incidents with police, referred 3 times to the government's Prevent scheme, but didn't show, overt ideology, so fell through the net. Do we not know how to deal with clearly, difficult and dangerous teenagers, Arlene?
Well, it certainly appears that way. And interestingly, the Home Secretary has said tonight that it's clear there were systematic problems right across numerous public sector organisations. That is incredible. I mean, it's something if one public sector organisation has difficulty, but these are multiple public sector organisations. And yes, the parents were criticised and pointed to today, as rightly is the case. But as the solicitor said in that piece, if parents fail, then the public sector enters in to protect everybody else. And there were so many instances of failure in this case. It's really, really very scary, I have to say, Anna, when you look at what happened in Southport.
And the Shadow Home Secretary today suggesting that documentation had been diluted because there were incidences of disproportionate black males with knives. And certainly the inquiry chair lamented the dilution of communications as part of the issue.
And also a misunderstanding over his autism. But that failure is across the board, as police, social services, intelligence services, and the parents.
Yeah.
And it's catastrophic in the end. And you look at the pictures of BBLC and Alice. That's 3 young lives taken, 8 others injured, 2 adults. All the grieving parents, people who are traumatised, absolutely horrific. But nobody took responsibility. I think you can come in with as many systems as you like, but unless people are going to take responsibility, then you're going to get awful consequences.
And sometimes you have to say things that may shock. And sometimes you have to say, hold on a second, this young man is a violent teenager, out of control. Yeah. Nobody wants to say that, but you're going to have to say things like that and take action then. You can't just shy away from it because he's autistic, because he's of a particular race. There has to be a willingness now to call things out and deal with them.
And he spent most of his waking time online watching horrific violence.
Unchecked, as we know.
No, absolutely, which is another area that has to be looked at, because platforms are publishing this violence.
Yes, well, no doubt we'll talk about this again. It is in a number of the newspapers, as you might imagine, and we will be taking a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers after this break.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Well, hastily reading here because it's time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. So let's kick off then with The Guardian. It leads on the findings from the Southport inquiry, which exposed catastrophic failures by the state. The killer's parents, blamed for not preventing the Southport attack, makes the front page of the Metro. The Express urges the parents to be held accountable for their failure to act. They didn't have to die is the front page of The Sun. The fight does not end today, writes the Daily Mirror. Meanwhile, The Times has the AI image of Donald Trump depicting himself as Jesus. Their headline reads, Trump rolls the dice on blockading the Strait of Hormuz. The Telegraph has the same story but describes Donald Trump's stunt and later rowing back on it as repenting. The Star pokes fun at the US president who shared that AI image of himself as Jesus. The headline is this: "You're not the Messiah, you're a very naughty boy." Ex-NATO chief Lord Robertson hits out at Sir Keir Starmer's complacency over defence spending. That makes the front of the Financial Times. And Brexit's back in the news with the Eye reporting that UK passengers have been abandoned in chaotic new airport checks. Come on to lots of those stories, but let us start with Trump as Jesus. In fact, The Star, who've gone with a tongue-in-cheek take on this, which has offended a lot of people.
Yeah, you're not the Messiah, a very naughty boy, of course, in Monty Python's classic The Life of Brian. He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. They could have probably called him Biggest Diggers as well, also from the film. But he might have deleted the image, but he can't, because he published it and put it out and promoted it. He can't stop it. It's everywhere, and it just does him damage. It's chipping away. Maybe it's the tipping point now for him because he's offended so many people, and he just looks an idiot. I think the Telegraph is wrong when it says he's repents because he hasn't repented. Because he's taken the image down, but but at the same time he's doubled down.
He says it depicts him as a doctor. There's a nurse in the photo as well. If we look at it again, and the suggestion is he has helped. He says he has helped people, and it was meant to be supportive of the Red Cross.
Well, man who took away medical insurance, medical care from 12 million poor Americans.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody could say that it's not depicting Jesus because I mean it's the whole iconography around it. His hand is lit up at the back and he's holding, it's all made to look as if he is Jesus. And to say that he's just a Red Cross doctor, I mean, if he was a Red Cross doctor, you wouldn't have that sort of imagery going on in the picture. So I think it's absolutely wrong. And I don't think he has repented, regardless of what the Daily Telegraph has said, because he has removed it, yes. He's tried to minimise the damage by deleting the post, but I think the damage has been done, actually, and I think it is very damaging.
He's a narcissist. We saw he had himself as Pope once. Now he's attacking the actual Pope, and we also saw when
he did actually have a meme
when he put around the video of Trump Gaza with a giant golden statue of himself. But he kind of got away with those. This one he hasn't, and I think it's because he's at a weak low point now over the war, which is very unpopular in the US. It's splitting his base.
Well,
the cost of living is
just on
soaring.
that. I mean, you're not a Catholic, obviously.
Well, I am a Church of Ireland. I am actually an Anglican, but I'm not a Roman Catholic. But I mean, I do think.
But the point is, it's offended all Christians.
Exactly. It's not just. It's just not Catholics.
That was what I was trying. So, white evangelical Protestants remain the most vital religious constituency of the Republican Party, with more than 8 in 10 white evangelicals voting Trump in the last election. 55%, nearly 6 in 10 white Catholics voted Trump as well. So,
but I think
alienating a lot of support in America.
Well, I think, Anna, if you listen to the report that we had earlier on in the programme, and they were being challenged about this, a lot of them will not believe actually actually that Trump has put this out. They said, oh, is that not AI? Yes, it is AI, but he retweeted it.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. He endorsed the image. And I think that's the damaging thing. Because, look, AI can put all sorts of things out there. We know that. You know, and he hasn't, he may not have originally put the image out, but he endorsed the image and he put it out in his own, he adopted it. Exactly.
Well, the row with the Pope is central to this as well. Yeah. The picture of, you know, Jesus-like figure created by AI compounding it, suggesting that Pope Leo is not doing a very good job and he's catering to the radical left. Leo, who's on a visit to Algeria, has hit out and said, I'm not afraid of the Trump administration.
Yeah, and Trump said he prefers Leo's brother Louis because he's a MAGA supporter. I mean, it's getting really, really silly in some levels, but again, it's rather dangerous given the number of Catholics we heard from David in the US earlier. 55% voted for him, biggest single Christian group in the US. He's going to come out on the wrong side of this battle, and it's almost as if he doesn't know it. I mean, he keeps just banging away instead of thinking. And the number of tweets coming out now, or posts on Truth Social, does he ever sleep? Has he, has he just completely and utterly lost the plot and totally out of control?
I don't know if you've got the Times. We've just been handed the Times, actually, which is, Trump rolls the dice on blockading the Strait. They've got the picture of the AI depiction of Jesus resembling Trump resembling Jesus, rather. The Times suggests that at least 2 tankers, one said to be loaded with oil for China, turned around rather than attempt to pass through the waterway, as the US deployed more than 15 warships across the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, east of the Strait. Arlene.
So this is a new take on this, that is Trump trying to bring China into this whole equation, in other words, making the conflict even deeper than it is at present. And this is a very worrying development, I think. Obviously, when the blockade was announced, I, like Kevin, thought, oh, there's been a mistake. Surely it's meant to say he's actually trying to open the straits, but actually it was the reverse, and he's blockading the strait. And what it looks like is that he's stopping ships that otherwise would have got through. In other words, allies of Iran would have got through had it not been for this blockade.
So financial pressure on Iran,
yes,
as you said, potentially sucking China in,
yes,
with the hope that China would then put pressure on Iran to find a way to have a continued ceasefire, which would presumably then have to be giving up nuclear weapons. But, you know...
It's very high stakes.
Is that the strategy, the rolling of the dice? I mean, nobody can quite predict what the end game is at this point.
Well, it seems to be attempting to escalate the dispute by bringing in China, but at the same time, the attacks on
China, India, Pakistan. I mean, these are all people who buy Iranian oil.
All big countries who we will alienate. Also, then they will be hostile to Trump in the US. But at the same time, militarily, he claims totally obliterated Iran. Well, that's clearly not the case. He's given it a real beating and destroyed many of its defences and attack weapons. But nevertheless, it still has a formidable number of drones, which can hit tankers in the Strait.
At the top of the Times, their warnings about Southport killer went unheeded. This is the inquiry chair finding. It's the lead story for a number of the newspapers, including the Metro. Killer's parents blamed for not stopping the attack, suggesting that they should take considerable responsibility for what happened. The Sun also, they did not have to die. The inquiry chair making absolutely clear that there were many years in which intervention could happen. I think Riddick Cabana was known to the authorities from the age of 13 when he himself called childline. He had gone into school carrying a weapon on more than 10 occasions, suggesting he wanted to hurt people.
Yeah, well, that Sun headline, they didn't have to die, is absolutely correct. And that, I don't know what that does to the parents who probably knew this anyway. And you just look at those pictures and you just think of those little girls who lives ended mercilessly at such a young age. Everybody else who's grieving, injured, surviving, and the inquiry report is absolutely devastating on the failures, the fatal failures right across the board, including the parents, but also the police, the security services, social services, and you wonder that the systems were there, but they just didn't operate. Now, why is that? Is it management, resources, recruitment? training, what is it?
Your paper, The Mirror, as well. This fight does not end today. Young victims' parents vow to battle for change. There's a second part to this inquiry, as the Home Secretary announced, which will also report in the springtime about change that could be brought in. But let's move on to another of the papers, shall we, which is about Brexit. And this is UK passengers who are going through more checks. A large number of them abandoned on a Manchester flight because Brexit's new checks are taking their toll at airport queues. And, you know, the cry is for emergency lifting of this when people can't get through to actually catch their planes.
Indeed, and let's face it, there are some countries who are using this as a way of actually saying to Brit travellers, well, what did you expect? It's your fault you left, which I think is just incredibly bad. I mean, I have flown to Europe many, many times since Brexit. There was only one occasion where British travellers were kept back as opposed to going through quicker.
But this is the new biometric.
But this is the new biometric. This is the new checks, and some of them are actually taking the opportunity to have a go at the Brits, which, I mean, it's just wrong.
The irony is it'll probably speed up our entry into the European countries in the European Union once it's in place. But I was caught in Rome with it and landed just after a plane load of Chinese who were having difficulty following the instructions on the screens. You give your fingerprints and then you're in and then you're out, and it's a lot easier, but it's horrific if you turn up and you've been held for hours.
Well, while we're on Brexit and its impact, the question is the UK backsliding on Brexit? The Prime Minister said today that the UK's best interests are in a stronger, closer relationship with Europe. I'm not going to block Arlie now.
It's hardly a shock, Anna.
I was watching.
We're all like doing that.
Your Brexit.
He is to unveil legislation which will mean the UK follows European Union rules. He said it was particularly important in light of the Iran war. Let's hear what he had to say.
Mr. Speaker, looking forward, it also means a closer economic relationship with our European allies, because Brexit did deep damage to the economy. And the opportunities we now have to strengthen our security and cut the cost of living are simply too big to ignore.
Well, the leaders of the Conservatives and Reform UK are not impressed.
Taking EU rules without having a vote on them is completely wrong. If you want to be in the EU, come out and say, we want to go back into the EU. That's what they're not brave enough to do. So they're picking this weird hybrid, which is the worst of both worlds. It's not in the EU, it's not out, it's just doing whatever the EU is doing.
Well, they would say it's the best of both worlds, right? They would say that it is, you know, closer alignment and smoother trade, but also...
No, it's the worst, it's the worst of both worlds. And we lose certain things.
We are rejoining economies, many of whom are doing even worse than we are right at this moment in time. It's a very fast-moving world in lots and lots of ways. The British economy needs to be flexible, needs to be adaptable, but equally needs to recognise that Europe is a declining part of the global economy, and actually quite rapidly declining. And to tie ourselves ever closer to it makes no sense in economic terms. And in democratic terms, it is a total betrayal of the Brexit vote of 10 years ago, and it is also a complete breach of the Labour manifesto.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has joined us. But, Arlene, I do want to ask you, first of all, are you impressed? Is this a betrayal, or is it better for business to be more closely aligned?
Well, first of all, it's no surprise, because Keir Starmer supported a second referendum when he was the shadow Brexit secretary, so it's not a surprise that he wants closer EU ties. Over this past 10 years, the Conservative government and the Labour government have failed to grasp any benefits of Brexit because they just haven't had the willingness to do that. And now what he's doing is, and I mean, I listened to the Tory leader talking about it, how disgraceful it would be not to have a vote on EU laws coming into the UK. That's right, but that's what's happening in Northern Ireland at the moment. We have EU law imposed on us in Northern Ireland without any democratic say at all. And I think it's right to highlight the fact that this is going to happen to the rest of the UK as well, which is wrong, I have to say, but this is the direction of travel.
Yeah, so John, be specific for us. What exactly is Sir Keir Starmer talking about here? Making rules more closely aligned and MPs not getting a say on whether they're a good idea or not?
It's the single market which the UK wants access to. And, of course, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, who goes to Washington tomorrow to talk to the IMF and all the various financial bigwigs and tycoons and so on. I mean, she's going to be talking about global leaders must take up more coordinated economic action. Now, what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are arguing is that at this time, when the economy is taking a massive hit from the Iran war, we know about the petrol prices going up at the pumps, energy costs, everything's going up in price, cost of living crisis. The government argues, this is what the Chancellor argues, it'll help bring about more economic growth. Now, no doubt her opponents would dispute that. And we've just heard very strong condemnation from Nigel Farage. Now, the argument the Tories and the Reform UK are using is it's not fair because they're proposing to bring in what's sometimes called the Henry VIII proposals. But what that means, basically, is you don't have a full debate in Parliament where you can amend proposals. It goes through what's called secondary legislation, delegated legislation. Sometimes they go through on the nod, or it's just a straight vote, yes or no, can't amend it. So the government's opponents are crying foul. It's our fight, though, that Labour are quite keen to have with the Conservatives and Reform UK. They point to opinion polls which say, actually, Brexit is pretty unpopular. I mean, you say it's all the fault of governments post-2016. But the fact is, you've seen the stories about the queues at the airports, all that sort of stuff.
That's not got anything to do with economics, though, Joe.
No, but it's not good for growth, is it? It's not good for growth.
What, people leaving the country and going to Spain? It's not good for growth?
No, it affects people coming here as well. Anyway.
But it became harder after Brexit. For a start, you had to have your passport stamped. Didn't happen before, and it takes time.
I quite like having my passport stamped.
Well, lovely, you can collect them. I don't like queuing behind people having to have their passport stamped.
The government claims that public opinion is moving anti-Brexit.
Of course they will.
And that perhaps there are those who think we perhaps should rejoin.
So is this a desperation to get growth from somewhere, being clobbered by the Iran war, being clobbered businesses by their own taxes that they brought in?
And their own policies.
So, you know, I mean, they've got to seek growth from somewhere. But
well, there's also growth for, you put extra money in the NHS, which has been revived, and that goes into spending in the economy.
So
yes, there are.
It's like the Brexit bus you're talking about.
There's no doubt raising employers' national insurance squeeze companies, unquestionably, but there are other measures which are boosting the economy. On this dynamic realignment, the truth is, if you export into a market, and half our trade is with the EU, if the market you're exporting into changes its rules and requires different emission levels for cars, you've got to change yours if you want to export. And that's what's happening. It's the same if you go into the States and they change, say, food regulations. You've got to meet them. And the idea of the dynamic alignment is when they change, our standards will change. Now, when Kimmy Badenoch says we'll have to follow the rules, well, she should have remembered when we were in the European Union, we helped make the rules. She voted to take us out, so she is partly responsible for why we may have to
that's a very circular argument.
Guys, I'm running out of time.
Margaret Thatcher was a great fan of the single market, of course.
Yeah, we're
not suggesting Margaret Thatcher would support this.
She was a fan of the single market.
Set it up.
Yeah. She also believed in democracy.
She did. The Single European Act, 1986. She was a big architect of it.
We're eating into Rory McIlroy chat time now. Anyway, that is next. Back in a moment.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, eh?
Let's go. Watch weight. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
That is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Well, John is still here as a fan.
Stalker.
Because Rory McIlroy wouldn't say it himself, but he is now among the greats of golf. The Northern Ireland golfer became only the 4th man to win back-to-back Masters. I've made myself laugh. And joins an exclusive group of players who've won at least 6 major tournaments. But it's not been plain sailing. He's been speaking to us about the challenge of staying mentally strong after that shaky start.
If someone had told me when I arrived here to Augusta on Saturday afternoon that I'd be tied for the lead going into the final round, I would have been like, yeah, absolutely. I will take that. So I just had to remind myself of that. Yes, had I given away that cushion that I built up? Absolutely. But I hung in there and I grinded and, you know, I shot something that was at least respectable to give myself a chance.
Arlene, the pride,
respectable.
At least respectable, winning again. The pride of Northern Ireland.
Oh, we're so proud of him. I mean, he is such a great example for young people across the world, but we're particularly proud of him in Northern Ireland. His own home course at Hollywood in Northern Ireland is a Hollywood sequel, they're saying, all of this sort of thing. They are so proud of him. And you know what? His parents gave so much to make him the star that he is today, and he never forgets it. He again referenced it when he received his green jacket yesterday, and I think that's really lovely. He's really down to earth. He's a wonderful role model, and we're so very proud of him.
Go on then, John, spill it.
It was
How
tense.
was it overnight? Was it tense?
It was tense, because on the first 2 rounds, he was brilliant. I remember seeing him chipping in from way off the green. And then, so going into Saturday, he was 6 shots ahead. In the end, he only won by 1. And, of course, all the top American players were chasing him. And the last few holes, and at least it didn't go to a playoff like last year. But it was another late night, but well worth staying up for.
Goodbye, politics. Hello, Sky Sports News. But I love the stories of the families and the people behind the golf. He's a magnificent golfer, brilliant sports person. But I always love to find out those backstories.
Well, you were saying his dad held down 3 jobs at one point to try and get him funded.
3 jobs, and his mum was working as well. And he references the fact that his mum and dad used to not see each other because they were working different shifts and what have you, just to make sure that Rory, their only child, got what he deserved, and I think it's just a wonderful.
He might have a private jet, but he does sound grounded.
He is really grounded, and you know what? His caddy is his best friend, and I think it's lovely.
Arlene, Kevin, and of course John, thank you. Back with more from The Wrap after this.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Tonight on The Wrap, Trump takes on the Pope. He deletes this image of himself as Jesus after being accused of blasphemy, but insists he has nothing to apologise for as he doubles down on criticism of the leader of the Catholic Church over the Iran war. And more trouble for Trump as the Prime Minister tells him the UK will not take part as America's new blockade at the Strait of Hormuz comes into force. Tonight we ask, is the US President running out of allies? Also ahead, the litany of failures that led to the Southport attack. A host of officials and the killer's parents are singled out for not stopping the murders of 3 young girls. The Tories and Reform hit out at the Prime Minister after he claims Brexit deeply damaged the economy and he wants a closer relationship with Europe. Plus, Rory McIlroy tells us how he stayed mentally strong to clinch his back-to-back victory at the Masters. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Baroness Arlene Foster and Kevin Maguire, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of the President's papal row. Well, hello there. Very good evening to you. Arlene, Kevin, welcome to you both as well. President Trump has opened an unlikely new front over the Iran conflict, a war of words with the Pope. And he has compounded it by posting a picture of himself as Jesus, which he has since deleted after an outcry. Well, there it is. Arlene, your thoughts?
Well, it's been reported tonight that he's repented his actions of retweeting this clearly AI image of himself as Jesus, but he hasn't repented. What he's done is actually doubled down on his criticism of the Pope, and he must realise that this is hugely damaging, and he does realise it's damaging because he's actually deleted the imagery, and for him to do that is quite a big thing because he very rarely deletes his posts.
Kevin.
Trump's unhinged, deranged and dangerous. This is on a par with what he's doing in Iran, Strait of Hormuz, the war he started without knowing how to end it and then threatening to wipe out his civilization. Now he's comparing himself or likening himself to Jesus. We saw his Trump Gaza in the past with a giant gold statue. I mean, he's not well, is he? I mean, that could be the only conclusion. He is not well.
Well, there's the Daily Telegraph's take. Trump repents his Jesus stunt. But the row began after Mr. Trump accused the Pope of being weak after the pontiff voiced concerns about the Iran conflict. Well, the Pope rather hit back, saying he would continue to speak out against war. Tonight, Mr. Trump insisted he had nothing to apologise for and the Pope was wrong. But his actions have met with criticism from international allies and accusations of blasphemy over this from some of his staunchest supporters in the US. Let's hear then from our US correspondent Mark Stone reporting from Virginia.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person.
I voted for him. I like him a lot, but there are times he's kind of going overboard.
Is he in trouble?
No, I don't think so. I think before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
And what do they make of this?
I do support the president. I do not support what he just did there.
No, I never saw that before. You sure that's not AI?
Yes, this is Trump as Jesus, an AI image posted by him, now deleted, by the way. I'm in Virginia at Holy Trinity, Gainesville. Beyond the Washington, D.C. bubble, Trump does well in communities like this, but then so too does religion. Monday midday mass is well attended in this huge suburban church. So what happens here when Trump compares himself to Jesus and takes on the Pope? He posted the image of himself as Jesus.
Oh, well, that's a little over the top, I think. But yes.
But he still has your support for now.
Yes.
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin, no matter what. Because aside from this picture, this is the best president we've ever had, bar none.
And while we were talking, back in Washington, the president was backtracking.
They're all your favorites.
Sort of.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support.
As for the Pope, well, he had this.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel.
Finally then, why is the president lashing out at the Pope? Well, maybe because he hears him and he fears him. He can't remove him, he can't destroy him like he has so many of his opponents, his political opponents. The Pope is above all that. He's also an American. His voice resonates here far more.
There's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong.
But there's something else too, I think. Precisely because he's an American, Trump thinks he can more easily cast him as one of them, not one of us. And remember, 55% of American Catholics gave Trump their vote in 2024. They are watching this fight for sure.
Yes, Trump versus the Pope. You know, who would have thought that? I have no fear of the Trump administration. He's been speaking in Algiers earlier today as well, condemning violations of international law by neo-colonial world powers. And as we, heard one of the faithful in that report, if you pick a fight with the Pope, think at least twice.
Yeah, I thought that was a wonderful understatement from that guy, and you got it exactly what he meant. And I think that Trump has already lost this one, and the Pope has won it. Because his own base is now turning against Trump. He hasn't thought it through. He hasn't apologised. And then he treats people as, like fools when he says, oh, I thought it was me as a doctor. Quite clearly not the case.
I think what you're saying is right, Kevin, but when you listen to that report, those people there at that Catholic Church were still willing to back Trump. And I think sometimes when we're looking in from the UK into America and we're putting our perspective into America, it doesn't always work. Yeah, and I think, we have to take that into account, actually. OK, for us, it's very offensive, it's terrible, it's awful, he's messianic, it's all of those things. But for his voters, that doesn't seem to be coming across.
I think we'll see in November,
in
the midterm elections.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough. Is that a real prospect, do you think? Because many people say because of the ICE deportations and apprehensions that he's alienated, Hispanic the voting base of, Hispanic and Spanish speakers. Is it now, you're alienating with this picture here, which Christians on all denominations have found offensive?
Yeah. All leaders will alienate some people, but he just seems to be in overdrive to do it because he's got a great cost of living crisis now in the US. Because of what's happened in Iran, the closure or the choking of the Strait of Hormuz. And then he's picking needless fights, which people just find incredibly offensive, this imagery.
Well, I think his MAGA supporters will also be greatly worried about the fact that instead of looking at his own sphere of influence in the Americas, he's moved into the Middle East. And I think they will be saying, hold on, what about America first? Why are we in this war in the Middle East? And those people, I think, will be looking at all of this and making a reassessment.
Well, the substantive issue today was Trump's decision to, block the Strait of Hormuz, block the blockade, in fact. And the UK Prime Minister told President Trump the UK would not take part in that blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. So how would the blockade work? How might Iran respond to it? Here is our military analyst, Sean Bell.
It's day 45 of the Iran war. President Trump has threatened to blockade all maritime traffic passing in and out of the Strait of Hormuz bound for Iranian ports. There are a number of Iranian ports here. What's expected to be the primary focus is Karg Island to the north there. That's where most of Iran oil exports are from, but also Jask port down to the south here. He's also threatened to interdict any traffic in international waters that has paid tolls to the Iranians and threatened to bomb to hell any Iranian resistance to this plan. President Trump claims there are other countries that are prepared to help, but that's prompted Sir Keir Starmer to say that the UK is not going to be involved at all. What is interesting is how would this blockade be established? Well, it won't be like World War II, simply putting a line of ships across the Strait of Hormuz. Not only would that be incredibly vulnerable, but it's also not really required. The main focus will be on the big tanker ships coming from Karg Island. You need to detect them, track them, and potentially interdict them, and you can use a variety of different ways to do that. The US has already got 2 destroyers in the region. They will be heavily augmented by air power, operating either from the carrier group or land-based, and they have access to helicopters as well if they need to board vessels or indeed to detain them. So one of the big challenges facing the US is the minefield that's just the southern side of the Strait of Hormuz. When we think of mines, we think of conventional floating mines, World War II. These are not going to be used in the Strait of Hormuz because they're very difficult to track, and it'd be just as much danger to the Iranians as it would be to anybody else. Instead, Iran has got moored mines and seabed mines that have both got magnetic triggers and also acoustic triggers. They have up to 6,000 of these in their inventory. The challenge is how many of them are actually in the Strait of Hormuz. Some suggest that there may be none, but most conventional wisdom thinks the number is about 12. That shouldn't be too difficult for the US to counter. They have state-of-the-art ships like this littoral combat ship with mine countermeasures on board, the USS Santa Barbara, triple-hulled. It doesn't trigger the magnetic detectors, but it's also the first time this ship's been used operationally, which should make it interesting for the crew. Of course, the Iranians themselves will not be taking this line down. They have spent 30 to 40 years preparing for this day. They know full well the Americans would dominate them militarily in conventional warfare, but they've got a collection of Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, anti-ship missiles, and also fast patrol boats, miniature, autonomous, packed full of explosives. Now, individually, any of those would not present a major threat to an American ship. But the Iranians will be looking to counter military quality from the Americans with quantity. In other words, to use quantity to deluge defences and swamp the American defences, potentially facing one particular vessel. Of course, will this actually work? Well, historically, blockades have taken time to actually deliver results, and that's time that President Trump doesn't have. It's also true that the US has previously said that the Strait of Hormuz is not of great interest to the Americans. Therefore, why are they getting involved at all? There's also a risk, though, that, of course, China gets a good proportion of its oil from not only Iran, but also the Middle East. And if America was to start intercepting ships bound for China, or worse still, Chinese ships, a grave risk of escalation. Through all of this, though, it's pretty evident that military action has not delivered the strategic success that President Trump has been seeking. Despite US military dominance, Iran still has a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz and significant leverage for any forthcoming negotiation.
Well, in terms of discussions with Iran, which broke down, J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, has been speaking to Fox News and suggested that a lot of progress was made in those talks with Iran, suggested that the expectation is that Iran will make progress to opening the strait, and suggests that the prospect of a second round of talks with Iran, the ball is in Tehran's court on that. So that's the latest from him. The breakdown seemed to be on their willingness to give up the prospect of nuclear weapons. In the meantime, the Times newspaper starts to talk about the impact of Trump's blockade, of the actual Iranian blockade, if you call it that, suggesting at least 2 tankers, one said to be loaded with oil for China, turned around rather than attempted to pass through the waterway as the US deployed more than 15 warships across the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea east of the Strait. Elsewhere, I'm reading that empty vessels are now turning around and heading elsewhere. So the question is, why is this strategy as it is? Is it to punish Iran in terms economically, to bring China into the conflict and China would then put pressure on Iran, or is it to persuade people to buy Venezuelan oil, which is now in the control of the Americans, and they've reported they're up the sales by 25%. I see today.
Who knows what's going on in Trump's head? One moment he wants to open the strait, the next he's having his own blockade. So you have 2 enemies, each having their own blockade. But I suppose you can see a rationale in saying Iran can't have it both ways. One, choke off ships to anybody it deems or views as an enemy, but then it can send out tankers, and charge tolls and make cash. But is it going to last days, weeks, months? How long is it going to be? You can imagine another round of talks. But because behind the defiant, bellicose talk on both sides, you can see the USA and Iran would probably both like this conflict to end.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that Trump lifted sanctions on Iranian oil and is now blockading the lifting of those sanctions. I mean, there's a lack of logic to some of this.
And whilst this is all happening in the Middle East, it's having a real impact here on people's lives in the UK. And my nearest neighbour in the Republic of Ireland have had blockades, as you know, and that has had a real impact, so much so that the Irish government announced on Sunday that they are offering a package of measures, I think totalling about £440 million to try and help people. I think it's a 10% reduction in tax for hauliers, for agricultural uses. And I was speaking to the Ulster Farmers Union today, and they were telling me that they're very concerned about fertiliser and getting fertiliser into Northern Ireland for the next wave of usage. And these are the real things that are happening in the UK and Ireland at the moment as a result of what's happening in the Middle East.
And I think protests expected in Northern Ireland tomorrow.
Indeed.
Questions in Parliament today. Kemi Badenoch asking the Prime Minister again, you know, get rid of the planned fuel rises that you've got. And I read at the weekend that in terms of jet fuel, which I think is not bought on the futures market, suggestion is that you could run out of, you know, jet fuel oil on the European continent within 3 weeks or so.
In truth, the withdrawal from September of the emergency 4-year-old emergency 5p cut in fuel duty would only be a penny. And anyone who looks at their, at the pumps, if you drive past or you pull in, you know a penny isn't really going to make much difference because prices have surged by 30, 40p.
Oh, more. I think more on diesel, isn't it?
Yeah,
actually,
it is. I mean, it's up to about 196, 197 per litre now. And I mean, because the Irish government have given this help to hauliers and farmers and what have you, that's now going to have an impact in Northern Ireland because they'll be looking south of the border and saying their government has given this help. We're now going to have blockades. I mean, I read somewhere before I came on air that schools are considering closing early to avoid being caught up in the block. So this is having a real impact now on people's lives as they go about their daily business.
Because the government here was relieved that the energy price cap for domestic consumers came in just before 3 months. But I think the only real initiative has been the 50 million for heating oil.
Yes, heating
which
oil.
a lot of people in Northern Ireland. But that's right. The smaller pressure is going to build and build and build for bigger help.
60% of Northern Ireland and me as well, just so as you know. Anyway, so what sort of help do people want from the government when we're all affected by what is happening in the Gulf? Siobhan Freeman-Powell has been canvassing opinion in Nottingham.
What issues are you noticing?
Oh my gosh, what aren't we noticing? I mean, at the moment, the hauliers that we're using, because I work for a freight forwarder, so the hauliers are implementing up to like 12% surcharges on everyday rates. So we're being hit hard with fuel surcharges in particular.
Because the price of crude oil dollars now, the Brent is over $100 per barrel. But UK is not producing, we are consuming. Yeah, of course I worried because it affects my purse as well. Because I spent more only before the war.
If there were going to be any support on offer from the government, what would you like to see? What help do you think could be afforded to people like you?
I don't know, maybe some subsidies on things like the fuel for those people who have to travel a lot, maybe for work, commuting, that kind of thing.
The best support they can do is to encourage countries to stop fighting each other.
My husband buys the fuel for the car. And everything else has gone up, as you say, so it's just another additive.
Yes, in fact, the US Energy Secretary has been speaking tonight. This is Chris Wright, suggesting that oil prices are likely to hit their peak in the next few weeks once ship traffic resumes through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that's wishful thinking at the moment, isn't it? If that is, prices are expected to continue rising until meaningful ship traffic resumes through the Strait. Well, you know, that means we've got weeks more of rising prices, haven't we?
And meanwhile, because the government levies a percentage on the litre of diesel or petrol you put in your car, that means that they're getting more and more funding into the Treasury. And people are looking at that and saying, well, hold on a second, this isn't fair. Surely that should be rebated back to us because we're struggling at the moment.
Yeah, the VAT element. The Economist had a report. There's more than 200 tankers backed up, waiting to come through. I don't know what pace they can come through, but even if it resumed, I suspect it'll take some time to get back to normal, whatever normal was.
In the meantime, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov tonight has urged Iran not to resume any means of fighting and suggest that Russia would be there to help with any discussions.
Send us your drones, please, so we can use them against Ukraine.
There we are. Yes, indeed. JD Vance suggesting to Fox News that a lot of progress was made at the weekend, so we'll see what happens with that. Coming up here on The Wrap, we will take a look at the shocking findings of the Southport inquiry.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim. What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Now, the public inquiry into the Southport stabbings has found they could and should have been prevented. Numerous agencies were blamed, as were the parents of the killer, Axel Ruder-Cabana. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, has this report now from Liverpool.
By the time Axel Ruder-Cabana arrived at that dance studio in Southport, very little could have prevented his murderous attack. But for 5 years before this moment, agency after agency and his own parents failed to take the chance to stop him. The cost was the lives of B.B. King, Elsie Dot Stancombe and Alice de Silva Aguiar, and harm to so many others. The inquiry into how it happened found it was foreseeable and avoidable.
I have no doubt that if appropriate procedures had been in place, and if sensible steps had been taken by the agencies and AR's parents, this dreadful event would not have happened. It could have been, and it should have been, prevented. That what happened on that terrible day was not, to use the familiar phrase, a bolt of lightning out of a clear blue sky. Instead, some form of grave violence by AR had been clearly, repeatedly, and unambiguously signposted over many years.
But police, health and social services, even the security services repeatedly passed the buck. Chances to arrest him, chances to find his arsenal of weapons and poisons earlier were missed. And Ruder-Cabana's parents, the inquiry found, bore considerable blame for not sharing what they knew. In the more than 700 pages of Sir Adrian's report, one line stands out. He said, if Axel Ruder-Cabana's parents had done what they morally ought to have done, then Axel Ruder-Cabana would not have been at liberty to conduct his attack. It would not have occurred. For the victims, there are so many who share that blame.
There will always be bad or inadequate parents. And that's why we have these state agencies there. They're designed to step in and to intervene and to take the action that's necessary. Here, they were on the phone, they were having meetings, but there was just no action. It was like they were playing ping pong ball with this person who turned out to be a murderer.
There were 24 girls at that Taylor Swift-themed dance event in July 2024 when Ruder-Cabana entered with a knife and began his attack. He is now serving a minimum 52-year sentence. This young woman was one of those who survived the attack, but still bears the mental and physical scars. Are you hopeful that this inquiry will do that, will make a difference?
Hope so. Sure hope so. Otherwise, what's it all for? If we're not getting change, then what's the point?
You want your voice to be heard in all of these areas. Why is it so important to you?
Because, no, I don't think anyone else should go through what any of the people involved have, or what they go through on a daily basis. No one else should feel like that, because I can still recall like it's yesterday. It's almost been 2 years, and it's still there.
The Prime Minister promised to act on the inquiry's recommendations.
I want to put on record in this House my total determination to make the changes across the entire state that are so clearly necessary to honour the victims, the injured and the families of Southport. Yeah. Today's report, Mr. Speaker, is harrowing. It is difficult to read, and I cannot begin to imagine the pain upon pain that it will cause the families that it affects. And our thoughts are with them today.
But for the lives taken and those changed forever, if only others had done what they should have, the inquiry chair said, history simply would have taken a different course. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Well, this was a very difficult listen, and we've seen how the newspapers have reacted. Basically, the deaths of those children, that attack that day, should not have happened. It was preventable, Arlene.
It was preventable, and some of the front pages have went on the parents, focusing on the parents and saying that they should have stopped this from happening. But I don't think that that's the whole story. I think the whole story is the fact that a whole range of public sector bodies did not deal with this issue. And that, to me, is the big story, because you know, there are bad parents, and we realise there are bad parents and parents who can't cope with particular circumstances. But when that happens, surely the public sector then steps in, and there has been a litany of failures. And the Home Secretary has said that it is quite shocking. And what's going to happen next, I think, is the big thing, because we can't just ignore what has happened to not only these 3 young girls who their lives were taken away from them, but all the other girls that were there that day have been traumatised, and their families, and think of what else could have happened. So this is a turning point, I hope, for all of the public sector bodies involved.
It is, as Arlene says, it's a litany of failures. I find it right across the board. As a journalist, you know, as a paper boy, I find it quite interesting what you know, different titles pick out of it. Because you're right, the males picked out the parents. The son is they didn't have to die. The Mirror you know, let something come from this. While I said the Times and the Guardian go on. You know, it's everybody's failing.
Yeah.
And it was because it was the police, it was social services, it was the intelligence services, and yes, it was the parents too.
Yes, and you know, the criticism or the huge amount of responsibility, you know, falls at the feet of the parents who failed to set boundaries for their son, certainly in terms of his online viewing, or stand up to his behaviour as he became fixated on extreme violence over many years. He only left the house for the last 2 years before this killing spree in order to harm somebody. You know, and in terms of the public organisations like the police, for example, I think there were multiple times that he was referred to them, 7 incidents with the police. For example, October 2019, he'd taken a knife into school on at least 10 occasions, and they failed to strike the right balance between harm to others versus criminalising a child. And then he picked up on, when he took a knife on a bus in 2022, when Axel Rudikabana smilingly referred to poisoning other people in the future, had said he'd manufactured poison in the past, said he wanted to stab someone with a knife he was carrying, and if he'd been arrested, his house would have been searched. They would have found the ingredients for ricin, and therefore something would have happened to him, which would have stopped this day and what happened that day.
Do you know, this also comes off the back of those awful Nottingham killings? Do you remember that? Absolutely dreadful, and the inquiry's ongoing there as well. There is a real problem with identifying people who have severe problems, maybe mental health problems, maybe just evil, but we have to find a way of dealing with them instead of just hoping that it's going to go away and that they don't take action.
Yeah, of course, here the conclusion is nobody took responsibility.
Yeah.
And it just needed somebody to take that decision.
Well, we've seen some of those newspapers, many of them leading on this. Let's take a look at those newspapers in full, shall we, just after 11:30. The Guardian then leading on the findings from that Southport inquiry, which expressed catastrophic failures by the state and responsibility, too, for Axel Rudikabana's parents. The killer's parents, again picked up in the Metro, blamed for not preventing the Southport attack, is the lead story for the Metro. The Express urges parents to be held accountable for their failure to act. And the parents being held responsible also makes the front of the Daily Mail. His parents should have stopped him. The Sun's take, they didn't have to die. Killer's parents shamed in report, or slammed in report, apologies. This fight does not end today, writes the Daily Mirror, which suggests the young victim's parents vow to battle for change after the report finds Killer's family and authorities could have prevented the deaths. The Times picks up on that AI image of Donald Trump depicting himself as Jesus. The main story, though, is that Trump has rolled the dice on blockading the Strait of Hormuz. On the Jesus story, Trump repents his Jesus stunt, makes the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Star pokes fun at the US president, who shared that AI image of himself as a Jesus figure. The headline is, "You're not the Messiah, you're a very naughty boy." Ex-NATO chief Lord Robertson hits out at Sir Keir Starmer's complacency over defence spending. That's the main story for the Financial Times as they picture the Pope. And Brexit back in the news, with the Eye reporting that UK passengers have been abandoned in chaotic new airport checks. More a biometric story than a Brexit story, potentially, but no doubt we'll come on to that. Should we take a look at how the newspapers are reacting to the Jesus depiction of AI? Trump, Arlene, has deleted it, and he has disputed it now, suggesting that he is a doctor.
Well, he's not a doctor. Clearly, the AI image is of him as Jesus. The Daily Telegraph says that he repents his Jesus stunt. I don't think he has. What he has done is deleted the Truth Social post, and I think that in and of itself is very significant because he very rarely deletes any of his posts, and I think that tells you that there has been a kickback in the US in relation to this, and rightly so. It's a hugely offensive post.
You get the Star.
I know.
He wanted the Star.
From Monty Python's The Life of Brian, you're not the Messiah, you're a very naughty boy. He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy, although biggest dickus would also apply in the case here of Donald Trump. I think, bring it on. And you imagine the crowdfunding to back me. Well, the crowdfunding to back us, it'd be enormous.
Yeah, if you've got millions out there.
But of course, he's taking people for fools by pretending, lying that he thought he was just being a doctor. He knew exactly what he was doing. He claimed when he survived the assassination attempt, God had chosen him to lead America. We've seen him posing himself as the Pope. Just around the time at the start of the Iran war, we saw him in the White House with a laying of hands on him from all his staff. He's kind of got a God Jesus complex. He thinks he is in, but I think this is really damaging because it's an image that will stay.
Yeah. And this is one American, i.e. the Pope, that he can't deal with.
That's right. He can't bully him.
He can't bully the Pope, and he's made it very clear tonight that he's not going to be bullied.
Yeah, like Trump is as religious as a televangelist found, with sex workers and taking the money from donations. I mean, look, he's not at all. He's managed to get people to vote for him, but. You wouldn't.
You're scaring me now, Kevin. I'm going to move back to taking on the Pope. You take on, do you, 1.4 billion Catholics around the world and other Christian denominations too, do you think? Is it that serious?
I do think it's that serious, but I do think there are those in America who will give him the benefit of the doubt because they will say, oh, it's an AI image. It wasn't him that made this image. But, of course, he retweeted the image and made it his own and now has had to delete it again. I think there are those in America who will continue to support him regardless of what he does. However, I do think it's hugely damaging for him, and the fact that he is continuing the row with the Pope and the Pope having to respond to him, it's quite incredible. It really is quite incredible.
And suggesting that Pope Leo wouldn't be Pope if he hadn't been American because the Vatican was trying to find a way to, get in with the Trump administration.
Which I think is an utterly groundless claim.
Yeah. We've jumped to the Financial Times, actually, which has a picture of the Pope on it. It also has words from the ex-NATO chief, Lord Robertson, who is hit out at complacency amid concerns, obviously, about our defensive capabilities. Your thoughts on this, then, Arlene?
I think this is a really significant intervention by someone who's very well respected, not just within the Labour administration, but actually right across Parliament. He sits in the House of Lords and is very well respected. So the fact that he has hit out at complacency and the fact that he's saying we're not at all ready, we need to put more money in, and he does the unthinkable and actually talks about the welfare budget. The welfare budget is now 25% of our overall budget.
Because he's Labour, isn't he? Let's remember
he
that.
is a Labour. He is a Labour peer and very much part of the Labour establishment. And for him to say this, I think, is incredibly significant, and I think there will be fallout of this.
It will hurt because he was a Labour Defence Secretary, NATO Secretary General, and then Keir Starmer appointed him to produce a strategic defence review. But now, of course, this corrosive complacency. If you're the Prime Minister or you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer, you've got these commitments to increase defence spending, but at the same time you've now got an economic shock from a war in the Middle East with Iran.
It's the undeliverable promises. Is that the problem?
It is. You're beginning to get really squeezed.
And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting on the defence investment plan, and it hasn't come. And all we get is it's coming as soon as possible. Blah, blah, blah.
I think there's a panic around welfare spending because as a proportion of GDP, it's still lower than it was about a decade ago. But nevertheless, if you're going to bring in cuts to redirect money elsewhere, they're very difficult to implement because you will leave people complaining and they will sometimes get sympathy.
Yeah, and the Times we've already seen, I'm just going to read out the headline again, you'll see it as it goes past. Trump rolls the dice on blockading the Strait. Of course, this means that the Strait is still closed, which means that oil prices are affected, which means it has a big impact on people. Even if you're going to try and fly, there's that one. We've got plenty more stories coming up, including the biometric pressures at European airports and how that will impact you. Back in a moment.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
So taking a look at tomorrow's newspapers with Kevin and Arlene. Arlene, let's go to biometric checks now at European airports, including, I know you said it was a Chinese flight had come through, had it? But loads of people heading for Manchester did not get on an EasyJet flight. And some people who fibbed and said they were going to London did, because it was obviously an earlier flight.
The Chinese flight was when I landed in Rome. And
when you landed?
When I landed. So I had a queue behind him. No, sorry, yeah. But of course now, at the biometric tests is where you've got to give your eyes and also your fingerprints on your right hand. It takes time to register. It'll be quicker once it's done, but of course we've just seen half-terming, a lot of families going away, more people going on holiday, and they're having to encounter this for the first time. But you can imagine in the summer, when flights are chocker and there's loads of them going into Spain, Greece and elsewhere.
I think the shocking thing is that the flights left without their they knew that the passengers were there and couldn't get through, but they left without them and then just left them stranded. So it's reported here that EasyJet flight to Manchester left without them, and EasyJet said the queues were outside of our control and called for more flexibility over the new biometrics checks. So they're saying it's not our fault, we're away, which is mad.
We've got a little sort of Europe section, actually, and I'm just trying to find J.D. Vance, who obviously went to Hungary in support of Viktor Orban, who had been in power for 16 years until Sunday. Vance, on the Hungary election, speaking to Fox News in the last half hour or so, sure, we'll work with the next Prime Minister. And they had Trump on the phone, didn't they, as they supported it. It's part of their strategy is to promote right-wing political groups across Europe. This is a clear failure, is it not?
Absolutely, and of course, Vance actually went to Budapest to back him. Trump phoned in, was endorsing him, and Viktor Orban, after 16 years, lost over corruption, changing election rules, putting cronies in media places. But I mean, what's not to like when Trump, Vance, Putin, and Farage will all be crying?
But the reality is, of course, this man is probably more right of centre than most of the Conservative Party in the UK.
Do you
know what I mean?
You're quite right. You know, but he is he's pro-European, pro-EU.
But the fact is he's not pro-Putin, which I think is good news for everybody, isn't that right?
Yeah, this is a double-page spread in the eye. I don't know if we can find it, can we? The country has chosen a pro-European path, and the whole point is this is, significant for Vance and Trump, who supported him, but in an ideological way. But strategically, it is important for Putin, because this is a country that buys Russian oil and was trying to block expenditure on the war in Ukraine from the European Union point of view. So in that sense, Putin it says here, Putin is waging a new Cold War and no one is stopping him. That's all very well, but he's lost another ally. Iran is under the cosh. He's trying to reform links with Syria. So everything that that is being broken down, he has to reform allegiances.
Yeah, and now Ukraine and Zelensky may get a huge EU loan that was being blocked by Hungary. No, it's an isolation to some extent of Putin, but it also shows the limits on the power of Trump. Now, I don't think he really made any difference in the election. I don't think Orban lost because of his support, but you've seen in other countries, including Australia and Canada, where Trump intervening backfired spectacularly.
Well, talking of elections, let's show you another Holy Trinity, and this is speaking at the Holy Trinity Church of England Primary School in Ashton-under-Lyne.
You see, Andy?
Yeah, it's spreading.
When's the last time you won a trophy straight in there? A little while ago.
Oh, yeah, sorry. All right, no, it's good.
We've done the football bit, so you're all right.
Okay, yeah, so I'm all right. I can turn up.
We're on to what's your favourite breakfast?
Oh, okay. What is your favourite?
I'll tell you what, the other end, toast is the favourite. What about you? Toast?
Cocoa Pops here. Cocoa Pops for sure.
Yeah, it was straight in there with that.
Even the brown chocolate.
Mine's a pumpkin, but it's got our We're doing the consultation on nutritional standards today.
With tangerine.
With a tangerine on the side.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
I don't know.
And here's how the Metro describes it. Labour's Holy Trinity, make peace for now. A united front. You're both giggling away at that.
Well, we're giggling because the children will always let you down. One of them said, toast. I can just imagine some of the press people going, he's toast. But you know what? There's a lot of religious language about tonight, but the fact that they were at Holy Trinity and then the three of them photographed together, I think it falls in with what they want to portray before the May election, of course, that they're a unified party. Does anybody believe it, Kevin?
No, well, Starmer stopped Burnham running the by-election because he wanted Starmer's job. Rayner is very friendly with Burnham, but they're also rivals for the crowd, and she wants Starmer's job too. It's a laugh.
OK, and I'm going to finish with a picture of the centenary tribute to Queen Elizabeth II's birth, with 12 new stamps released celebrating her life and passions. Can we see it? Page I5? No? There we go, fine. Oh, no, and we flip back again, never mind.
I think that coach...
You got the gist.
Gold coach cost almost the price of a stamp, actually, now.
Yeah, well, thank you very much indeed. That was a fascinating evening. Arlene Foster, Kevin Maguire, thank you very much indeed. We've got sport. Your hubby will be interested in this. Find out how Leeds made history in their win against Manchester United.
Up the Leeds.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. I've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away. Okay, but
listen,
I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
But I'm just going to put some body armour on.
I'm Yelda Hakim.
Well, let's get the sport now. Here's Mike.
Perfect, thank you very much.
A footballer's life is all about moving. I never had a problem with that because I was the one that was progressing in my football career.
The Crazy Gang's welcoming committee were making sure their new arrival enjoyed a warm welcome.
I'd had a small arthroscopy operation, and at that particular time there was a lot of clubs interested in me.
But in a last-minute twist, Wimbledon learned John Hartson would not be moving as Spurs.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. That seems a dead deal.
I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest. I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
A downbeat John Hartson was rushed out of Ibrox today, having been given the worst possible news.
We did not believe he was at the correct fitness at that particular time to go straight into Champions League.
Very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done.
I'm starting to question myself. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
The best medical he ever failed. I knew about his injuries, but that didn't matter to me because I think John had played 20 consecutive games for Coventry.
I was going to an absolute giant in Celtic Football Club.
Another season, another club for John Hartson.
So I've proved that my knee's fine and my fitness is good.
This was my complete say. I think he wanted to prove his fitness, and I think he wanted to prove Rangers wrong.
And here's Hartson!
Celtic fans hold John in the highest regard.
Incredible silver medal.
Celtic Football Club, to me, is a very special place.
These are the two strikers that have grabbed George Graham's eye, and at quite a cost. John Hartson, the teenager, arrives at Highbury in return for a cheque to the tune of £2.5 million.
It's just brilliant for me, it's just a dream come true really to come to a club as big as Arsenal.
A lot of my career I've moved around. When you get offered to go and sign for big clubs, a footballer's life is all about moving and, resettling, but I never had a problem with that. I went to Luton at 16 on a YTS scheme, progressed, and there was quite a few clubs interested in me at that time.
It's just a new start for me, I've just got to start fresh and just perhaps show people, what I can do.
I had 2 great years at Arsenal. They bid £2.5 million, which was a British teenage transfer record at the time.
He was bought for a certain part of the team, a more physical side. By the way, how good was he in the air? We were good at set pieces, and long throws, and that's what John was fantastic at. In out-and-out 9, that's exactly what John was.
Arsene, this way, please.
Arsene Wenger came in, and I remember Arsene Wenger was superb. And he asked me to stay. He said,
Mike, thank you. Let's take a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the next few days will bring widespread showers or more general rain, but it will turn a bit warmer. Northern, central and eastern Britain will have a mostly dry and sunny start tomorrow with a patchy rural frost. Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales and southwestern England will be cloudy and windy with outbreaks of rain. Cloud and occasional, mostly light rain will spread to many parts through the morning and the wind will pick up. Northern and eastern Britain will stay mainly dry.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.